Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. So here is my review for Spider-Man No Way Home. This is going to be a full spoiler review. I'm going to do like a quick minute, I guess, a non-spoiler review just to tell you whether or not I recommend it and just kind of general thoughts on it. But yeah, full spoilers for the movie, so I hope you guys are aware of that. I just got back from the theater and oh man, the movie is so good. Now, I will say I actually saw the rating on Rotten Tomatoes and it's like 95 or something like that. I would say that's probably what I would rate the movie overall. You know, at least out of 10, it would be like a 9.5, maybe like a 9 to 9.5 out of 10, because there's actually some issues I have with some of the pacing and some of the characters and not seeing enough. But for the most part, like, it's so much fun. The emotions really run high, and I mean, it's hilarious at times. You know, it's definitely a very serious movie, and like you saw in the trailer, you know, Green Goblin, Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin is just so good. Like he's so good. And so I would, you know, there's no complaints from me at all with this movie, really, for the most part. I'll get into some of that in the non-spoiler stuff, but it's nothing really that crazy. Again, I mean, rating a movie 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10 is super high. You know, like most movies aren't 10 out of 10. Like if you're saying it's 10 out of 10, it's definitely based off of emotion. I think once you calm down a bit, you might actually be able to see things a little bit more clearly, but this is my opinion on it, you know, and it's still a very high review. So yeah, definitely go check it out, especially if you're a Spider-Man fan. You have to go and see this. But let's actually get into the spoilers now. And yeah, this is your spoiler warning. If you haven't checked out the movie yet, then go leave, because I'm going to get into a bunch of stuff here that I really don't want to, I just don't want to spoil for people, you know, if you haven't watched the movie yet, because it's definitely like, it's worth seeing on screen for the first time. You really have to. Now, the story of this movie obviously was all about sort of, I guess, the ending of Far From Home, in which we saw Peter's identity expose the entire world. You know, he is Spider-Man. And you see a lot of that, I guess, play out throughout the entire the movie here. The ramifications of what Mysterio did really messed everything up for Peter. Like, because Mysterio did that, it led to Aunt May's death. It led to the ending here. It led to everything that we got here. And so, you know, when you think of that, Mysterio actually had a pretty big impact on this movie and overall the story and Peter's life. He ruined Peter's life. Like, it's pretty insane. Like, going back to watch Far From Home now, when he does that at the very end, it's pretty messed up. Like, I would say, honestly, he did more damage than the Green Goblin did to Peter in this movie. Because, like, the Green Goblin's amazing, like I said, and he does really crazy shit here. But, like, if the events of what happened and at the end of Far From Home never happened, none of this would have happened. And so, you know, like, we do see a lot of that. We see that Peter, MJ, and Ned, their lives are completely ruined because of this. You know, they won't get accepted into MIT. And they're having a really hard time, you know, just kind of trying to survive in general, and their futures are looking really, really poor. We actually saw Matt Murdock, and it was Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, which is really cool. That, you know, I mean, I guess he was already in this universe, but it was kind of just like, we had no idea, because like those TV series were a bit darker, you know, so it was kind of like, is he a part of this universe, or is it a little different? And there was also the whole deal and things that happened there with Marvel and stuff, where it's like, I don't even know if they're going to revisit the series with Netflix and stuff, but obviously they got the rights back and stuff, and so they're doing it now. And yeah, it makes sense that they're probably, I mean, my guess is after this weekend, they are going to announce more spin-offs and more TV series with stuff with these characters. I think we're going to get all of it back. It's going to be really cool. Honestly, next week, I imagine we're going to get a lot of stuff that's going to come out. But this leads Peter to go and talk to Doctor Strange and say, hey, can you fix all this? Do you have a spell that could actually make everybody forget about me again? And they kind of do. And honestly, I was worried about this aspect to it. Like, going into the theater, I was like, this is the one thing that could really make or break the movie. I was very concerned that, like, it was just going to feel so forced and so, like, this isn't going to really work well. Like, it's going to make no sense. Why would Doctor Strange be that dumb to do something like this? But when you actually see it all play out, it actually all makes perfect sense. Like, Peter is looking at his family and just his friends, and like, their lives are ruined now because of this, and he really feels bad, and it makes perfect sense, you know. And Doctor Strange, obviously, he is also a good person too. And they kind of play it off a little bit, you know, because he's like, well, we've done spells like this before. Like, do you remember? He was talking to Wong. He's like, do you remember this? I don't know what party it was, but it was some type of party that happened. And he's like, no. And he's like, yeah, exactly. Like, he's used this spell for less things before. So it actually makes sense overall with that, because Doctor Strange is also kind of reckless a little bit too. And we saw in the Doctor Strange 2 teaser, which I'll do a video on, but you can see the ramifications of his actions. He's very... I mean, he like Tony Stark, you know, Tony Stark's brilliant and all, but he gets in the way of himself, right? Like, he causes his own problems. And so that's exactly what Doctor Strange did here. But, you know, overall, it kind of worked. And I would say the pacing with the movie, and this is where I will get into some of the issues a little bit, it feels too fast. I actually think overall, when you're looking at, you know, the characters that came into the story eventually, the villains, they all got their time to shine. It's just that a lot of the pacing, like, this movie had to do a lot, and it did a really good job with what it actually had to do with all these characters, juggling all of them. And honestly, did a really great job with it. It was so fun. It's just that at times, especially in the beginning, it felt so fast, like we're going through the scene, going here, going here, going here. It was just like, it felt like we were going everywhere. And I was like, what is going on here? Like, we're jumping around so much. And obviously the second act gets a lot better, but it still feels a little rushed there. Like, this, honestly, I would have watched a 3.5 hour movie. And I think this movie should have been like 3.5 hours. I think everything would have been perfect after. I know some people would probably not like that. I think actually it would probably make the movie better. You know, it would be cool if there was like an extended edition or something that came out in the future. I think that would be like perfect, because like it just needed a little bit more, you know, like even an extra half an hour, make it a 3-hour movie. I think it just needed a little bit more to explain certain things, to not even just that, to just like live in the moment a little bit, because it moves so fast. It's like moving from here to here. You don't really get to relax a little bit. And, you know, some people might like that. I know like nowadays people like fast media. They like to get things faster, but I don't know. It just seemed a little bit too fast for me. But eventually we get the villains in the movie, which was really cool. Obviously we saw that in the trailer. You know, like Doc Ock, I will say, like, he wasn't in the end really a villain. I really liked that. I think that was the smart choice, because he never was really the villain ever. He was never the villain in Spider-Man 2. You know, like, it was sort of a malfunctioning of that, what do you call it, that inhibitor chip or something that actually made him turn that way. So I like the fact that Tom Holland's Peter was like, oh, I can actually solve that, and starts to actually work on things, fixes him. And also that choice in general to make the villains, or to cure the villains, I thought was really smart. And you kind of get into this whole thing with his aunt, and, you know, just, you can actually tell that Peter Parker, Tom Holland's Peter Parker, I mean, I guess all the Peters, and we'll get to that in a second, but they're genuinely good people, you know, more so than like Tony Stark or like even Captain America or Doctor Strange. You know, for them, the Avengers, they really didn't really care too much about the casualties so much. They didn't really care about human lives. They just wanted to like defeat the threat. Spider-Man is so different, though. Spider-Man is definitely more like, I want to even try to save the villains. I don't want to have to kill anyone if I don't have to, you know? And he definitely deals with some stuff, especially when the Green Goblin shows up. And man, Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin is like, somehow he topped his performance in Spider-Man 2002, like the very first one. I mean, he's still really great in that, and I would say I prefer his scenes overall in that movie, just because you get a lot of time with him. But he has so much screen time here. He's the main villain. Out of all the 5 villains that show up here, he is like the main villain, and he's so good. He's so charismatic. He has that laugh. The suit was amazing. I wish we would have got a little bit more of the suit. We saw a little bit of it, and then all of a sudden it was done. You know, I think seeing a little bit more there would have been really cool. I mean, I like the fact that he was talking with the helmet again. You know, you had scenes like that, but just a little bit more. You know, I like that original suit. It looked really good. And I like the fact that later on he still kind of had the suit on, just not the helmet. And then he wore like that purple hood. So you had that element of the Green Goblin still there, because in the comics, that's what he looks like, but it still wasn't quite the same, to be honest. It still wasn't exactly the same. And I mean, it's not really what you're focused on anyways. Like, you're focused mostly on the performance. And again, it's a really minor thing. Like, I didn't even dock points off for it in my overall review. But the curing the villain storyline definitely is something that, you know, I actually think was needed. I think it actually made everything, I think it made Aunt May's death that much more impactful, because you have the line, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. That I think was so important for this movie. And I really feel like this movie overall, and even just the Tom Holland trilogy here, kind of puts us, I guess, puts this Peter in the place of Tobey's Peter in like the end of Spider-Man 1. Like he's kind of at that point now where he lost a lot of people. He lost everything. You know, he lost his family. No one knows who he is anymore. And now he's just sort of on his own and he has to conceal his identity. What does he do now? I honestly, I wasn't the biggest fan of Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Like I was a fan, obviously I do like him, but now I'm definitely more of a fan. Now I'm like, okay, so now we can actually get somewhere here, because I always preferred Tobey's Spider-Man just because you got to see that emotion. I like the fact that he concealed his identity and like, you know, like because it was a threat to his family and all that. I really liked all those aspects. And Tom Holland's Spider-Man never really cared for that too much. Nothing really happened. But now I think they can actually go in that direction. I'll still always prefer Tobey, but I think I can actually really like Tom Holland as Spider-Man now. And that's right, Tobey and Andrew Garfield, obviously they show up here. I will say, I think their introductions were really cool. The theater I was in was freaking out. The only downside I would say to all of it, first of all, I think Andrew Garfield got a lot of screen time. I actually think he got more screen time than Tobey Maguire, which is kind of my downside to it. You know, like we got so much of it. We got so many references. Like I'm something of a scientist myself. That I'm on my back thing. There was no like Spider-Man pointing at each other. There was none of that. But it really was mostly that like we didn't get a lot of time with Tobey Maguire in terms of like seeing him as Spider-Man. You know, I think there was a missed opportunity in this movie to actually see him put the mask on and just see what he looks like and use more of that music. I know there was that leaked music and I listened to it like a few weeks ago. You don't really hear that in the movie. You do during like a couple scenes, but like it's not as emotional. It's not as big. And so that's kind of my only complaints about it. You know, I wanted to see a lot more Tobey, and I think the pacing was a little off, especially in the beginning. I think it was just a little too fast. But overall, like I said, I gave it a 9 to like 9.5 out of 10 for a reason. It's so good. It's such a good movie. But the villains, you know, all of them I thought actually were pretty great. You know, Sandman, we actually got to see the actor come back at the very end. We saw the actor who plays Doc Connors in Amazing Spider-Man's universe anyways. I thought that was really cool. You know, Electro actually got so much spotlight, so much screen time. What they did with his character in this movie was so much better than what they did in the Amazing Spider-Man movies. Like so much better. It was actually really great. And, you know, I like the fact that like seeing Tobey, it felt so nice. It was like, oh, he's actually like, this is Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. And you kind of learn a little bit of what happened there, like with his life since like, I guess 2007. And, you know, him and MJ, I think are still a thing. They're still together. You don't really learn too much more because I think that if they want to do a Spider-Man 4, they want to come up with that on their own. But you do get that, you kind of like they hint at it a little bit, especially with Andrew Garfield, because they ask him like, what were you like after Gwen's death? Or they don't really ask him that, but he says that he was very angry, you know, afterwards. And we didn't see that in Amazing Spider-Man 2, because in Amazing Spider-Man 2, it ended with him just being super sad about everything. So I really wonder if they're hinting at a Spider-Man 3 or a Spider-Man 4, because if you think about the ending to everything, you know, the whole thing was we got to cure these villains, right? Like we want to really cure these villains. And that's exactly what they do. They're all cured of, I guess, what happened to them. And then they're all sent back to their own, I guess, respective universes, which means when they go back, it's like moments before their actual death. Well, they're going to be normal. So to think of, you know, in the very first Spider-Man with the Green Goblin, when he gets sent back, he's just normal Norman Osborn, right? And so Spider-Man's probably not going to kill him in that moment. Not even that. That Norman Osborn isn't going to like hit that button on his arm or whatever to make the glider come. So like none of that's going to happen. He's actually going to live and be fine. Like if you just think of all the villains in their final moments, it's all going to go back to normal now. I'm actually wondering when Tobey and Andrew go back to their own universes, what is it going to be like there, right? Like, are they going to be alive there when they go back? Is it just going to be the way it was? Or when they go back, is everyone going to be back? You know, and I think that's where you could actually do a Spider-Man 4 and an Amazing Spider-Man 3. I really think they set that up. And I'm going to talk about that over the next couple of days because I feel like that's going to be an announcement coming very soon. But obviously, I can't really put that in a title right now, at least not for the weekend. But starting Monday, we'll talk about it because obviously they revealed a lot of stuff in here. The post-credit scene was so cool with Venom. They didn't want to use Tom Hardy's Venom, which I'm so thankful because I hate that Venom, but they took the symbiote. So obviously that's like some sort of connection, right? And I really like that. I think Kevin Feige was smart to do that. And then Doctor Strange, I mean, you got the Supreme Strange or whatever at the end. I mean, they're going in a really cool direction here. I think that, yeah, all that stuff, Doctor Strange 2's teaser, that's going to drop next week because obviously they want to hype this movie up. But for opening weekend, they're probably going to be very quiet on everything. And definitely expect next weekend, they're going to be promoting the shit out of this movie, like in TV spots. We're going to see Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man on TV and TV spots and stuff. So yeah, I mean, there's so many things with this movie. I feel like I'm missing stuff. Like I honestly, there was a scene with Andrew Garfield saving MJ. That was amazing because, like, obviously he killed Gwen by accident, and he actually saves her, and he gets really emotional during it. And that was a really hard scene to watch. The emotion in here, Tom Holland, when Aunt May was dying, it was so hard to watch that scene. It was actually like, at first you think she's fine, and then it's like, oh no, something's definitely really off. And I've kind of felt it watching it. Like, it just seemed like something was off, and she was a death prediction of mine. I figured that like she was probably gonna go because they were saying this movie was like the darker out of the three. So I was like, hey, well, he's gonna lose somebody. Losing Happy, I think, would be sad, but not as sad as Aunt May. So, yeah, really great stuff. I thought the ending was perfect. Now none of them know who Peter is anymore. And so you can kind of go into different directions. I feel like this does open the door for Peter to have other relationships with, like, that version of, or like the MCU's version of Gwen Stacy, right? I know me saying that, people are going to be pretty pissed off, but like in the comic, he has multiples of relationships. He has like this whole thing with like Felicia, right? Like the Black Cat, and like there's a lot, and I feel like this kind of opens the door there a little bit. I feel like MJ was always like his one and only, but like I think for a little bit now, he's probably going to have other girlfriends. I think they'll do Gwen Stacy or Felicia, but in the end, that reunion, I think when actually more stuff comes out somehow, I believe Peter and MJ will eventually be back together, and I think that's going to be a crazy moment. But I think for the next, at least for the next trilogy, it's going to be just some other stories. And I mean, yeah, like I said, movie is overall really great, a really awesome movie. I was so excited watching it. I have those little issues with the pacing, and I wanted more Tobey Maguire, but other than that, it was so great. I had so much fun, and it's a high recommend for me. Like, even if you're not a Spider-Man fan, I would say definitely go check it out because you probably know a lot about Spider-Man just in general. There's a lot of emotion here, and yeah, I mean, I will say this movie actually kind of made me more excited about the Spider-Verse just in general. Like, not Sony Spider-Verse, but just the Spider-Man movies in general. I don't really care about anything else. Like, anything Avengers related, I kind of don't care about anymore. The Avengers don't even know that Spider-Man exists anymore. So I'm like, do I really care? Because he's not going to be an Avenger anymore. So who are the Avengers going to be in the future? Like, what direction are they going in? Honestly, I don't really care for any of that anymore. Even like the Loki television show, like, it was fun, but like where they're building to and that whole thing, like we'll see where they go. Doctor Strange 2 looks so good. I'm excited for that. I'm really excited to see if they introduce the X-Men and all that, but like, I'm kind of just here for the Spider-Man story. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is really great, and I really can't wait to see more from him. So yeah, I'm gonna leave it here before I keep rambling on any further. The movie was so good. High recommend for me. So definitely, if you've watched it already, post your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.